prior to yesterday, what I wanted to talk about is like, oh my gosh, Sarah, I am just nerding out and having the most fun on these like topics of earthing and forest bathing.
Forest bathing.
Yeah, because these are not new topics.
Right.
And they're like parts of alternative health, but they shouldn't be.
And they're free.
Yeah, they're free. So I wanted to present that. And then this morning I was like, oh gosh, like everything feels heavy with the state of the world and the shootings of the week and just the amount of all of this stuff. So I don't know about you, but for me this morning, I felt kind of numb. It was like I have a cup. My cup is full with like all that I could take from the COVID and the threat of nuclear war and all the things in our political climate that we've been dealing with. And then now the school shooting stuff that just is bringing up with it the history of every other school shooting that we can remember in our lifetime, even going back to Columbine when we were in high school. And that was like the first time that I can remember ever hearing about something like that and being shocked that could happen. And so anyway, I feel like my cup is full, like it can't hold anymore. And if you pour more onto it, it just has nowhere to go because I can't metabolize these things quickly enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure that other people are feeling that way too. If there is grief, there is heaviness, there is sadness, there's a lot wrong. And so what do we do with that?
Rise up. We have to do something. Well, what do we do?
What do we do? What do we do when it wasn't enough at Sandy Hook? That wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough
for
last
something
week.
to happen. It wasn't enough last week. Like, what do we do? You know, like in some ways, I'm like, I'm a life coach. Let me go back to my tools and try to be with this and figure it out. But it's not a figure outable thing as a certain individual. However, you know, there's more to that. You don't just get to take yourself out of it by saying, well, I'm just one person and what can I do? So I can't do anything.
Right.
So I was reaching out to my coaches as well of like, how do I talk with people about this and what solutions do I have a 6-year-old?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like all of us as parents and people who have kids in our lives that we love, how do we support them through this? How much do we even share with them? Like just all of it. So we can't guarantee that safety exists, but
in any facet,
anywhere.
Ever. You can go to the grocery store and obviously you're anything.
Church, the
anything.
Movies. Like we now know that not one of these places is safe.
Right.
What do we do and how do we kind of take a step back? And I think it's about calming our own nervous systems and beginning there. Then also remembering that systemic change happens when people raise their voices and enter the conversation. So there's also that part.
But taking care of your
mental self, your whole being. So we've been talking about self-care and how critical that is as a preventive strategy.
Right.
It's never less important than it is now to also be doing. And as constant, it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
And as we do this, we're modeling for our kids what they can do during times of crisis.
These outlets, instead of just letting it, like you said, your cup is full, it's spilling everywhere. What do you even do? Do you just get in your hole and pretend like it doesn't exist?
Yeah.
That's not the answer.
So stuff like this, whenever it happens, you know, 9/11, school shootings, things that the list could go on. So I'll just stop right there. But it activates our nervous system. It brings forth our fight or flight or freeze responses. And so I think that the first thing I would say to do, and what I've been doing myself, is to notice what comes up for you. If you feel like staying under the covers because it's a lot, let yourself do that. If you need to get your people around you and be with them because we are social creatures, we co-regulate. This is such a fascinating thing, but we do it all the time. You know, healing doesn't happen just in isolation. It frequently can happen as we bring our loved ones close and those feelings of oxytocin come up. And that's the good hormones that can then decrease the cortisol, which is all the stress hormones. And you can do that with your kids. If you snuggle with your kids, be with them, read a book, you know, that stuff. Specifically, if you're trying to help soothe children, stories are really, really important.
Okay.
And it's really interesting how when we're young, storytelling is a way that we communicate truth. And so look for stories that can kind of help communicate like a child or a animal successfully navigating hardship or make one up. I've done that before with my son, where I was like, I'm just making up a story here about this rabbit who was like, getting away from a fox or whatever, but like hiding and then running to safety or whatever to kind of like help teach and soothe the nervous system through that. And then enter all the other self-care things that we've been talking about. So for one, turn off the news, disconnect, put the stuff away that's going to be triggering and activating your nervous system.
And not forever.
Not for forever. We're not saying bypass. We're not saying just bypass.
Shut it off.
Yeah, because we need to engage with these issues, but in the heat of the moment, when you're feeling so overwhelmed or just like triggered, or all of this stuff is flaring up for you, take a chance to turn it off, because we live in these 24/7 news cycle, and that
you know how to find it again.
Yeah, and it just can bring up every bad thing that's wrong in the world, and not giving any attention to the people sitting down eat a meal together, or the hugs that are also happening. So that stuff is there for you, and access that and connect to it.
Yeah, that social media mindless scrolling can be really dangerous. So if you shut off the news, but then you're still scrolling, you're going to see somebody who's going to write something that's going to trigger you, and maybe you're going to get into a social media war, and that's not going to help.
Yeah, and then the two things that I wanted to introduce as self-care practices, especially now that the weather is getting nicer, you can also do with your kids. So do them together. Do it by yourself.
How often?
Do it with a friend daily if you can. So the first one is super accessible. Both of these are free. The first one is called earthing or grounding. It's the same thing. It just has two different names. And it is getting barefoot and being in direct contact with the conductive earth. So not asphalt. Gravel will do it. Sand, grass, dirt. If you do gardening, get your hands into the dirt, but be in connection with the earth. This is so interesting to me because it's a thing that humans did for forever. And we're always in a connection with the earth, whether we were sleeping on the ground or even people wore shoes, but they had leather footwear. So leather is conductive, and we were connected with the grounding nature of the earth's surface, which actually pulls positively charged ions out of our bodies and returns it to the grounding earth, which is just what we do with our homes. When we have electricity in our homes, that electricity is grounded into the safety and security, stability of the earth's surface. In the 1960s, synthetic rubber was invented, and we started insulating ourselves from the earth, and we haven't gone back. So you can go your entire weeks without actually touching the earth. Levels of inflammation and disease and bodily ailments connected to inflammation have just skyrocketed since the 60s. This is like true stuff, and it's like the weird science that's not weird that we just kind of forgot about. It's common knowledge
if you pay attention and if you put those things together. So, even the frequency of music has changed.
Absolutely. And there's all these things that we've known, but now there's science and studies to show what it does. So if you go barefoot, if you can do that 15 minutes a day, is going to dramatically reduce levels of cortisol in your body and inflammation, and make that a practice.
I love that.
I love it too, because it's free and really accessible. And if it is not possible for you, there are inexpensive grounding mats and grounding sheets that you can
Where are
buy.
you where you couldn't do 15 minutes? I'm just
Maybe
curious
you're in a
in your
high-rise.
life. Okay, fair.
Like some people in urban environments, it can be harder to find, but if you can, totally do it. Otherwise, you can access inexpensive equipment to help you do it. Like
I love that.
Grounding bed sheets. They actually make these, and you plug it into the electrical outlet to the grounding port, and you can sleep on that, and it will do this process for you through the night. I know. So I'm all about like
all these gadgets and anything that's
optimize your well-being as easily as possible. Great for kids. Really, really good because of all these holistic benefits. I mean, hugely for the reduction of inflammation, but also the reduction of cortisol to reconnect. If you happen to be a spiritual person and you want to bring in mindfulness, I think that's great as well. Be considering as you put your feet in the earth, how you're grounding and connecting to Mother Nature or Source or God, whoever you connect with, and having those roots of your own feet, like going down and connecting to the collective, to the earth, to the tree of life. Yeah. Or you can add in a gratitude practice and spend that time thinking about 3 things that you're grateful for every day. All of these things are going to calm your nervous system.
Yes, that deep breathing. Oh my gosh, I love this.
And then the other thing that I wanted to offer was this Japanese concept called Forrest Bathing.
Ooh, please tell me more.
Well, you do keep your clothes on, so we're not, but for the people who don't want to, I guess that's also a choice. But this is the bathing, which is really taking in the essence of the forest or the trees.
Oh.
And so when you do this, and this is prescribed in Japan and Asia, this is prescribed healthcare. This came about really in the 80s, and it goes back farther in Japan as part of like their cultural heritage of being really spiritually connected with nature. But in the 80s, the tech boom, they were seeing that people needed to be decompressing, disconnecting. Also, if you think about the increase in technology, the more the electromagnetic fields of everything.
That in the 80s.
In Japan, I know, right? Just think about where we're now in 2022. So to go be in nature, and when you do this, you disconnect from technology, you bring all of your senses, you go and you find a spot and become still and make yourself one in that environment and engage all your senses. So see everything that you see. What are you hearing? What do you smell? Notice, do the birds become quiet because you're still and you're there and you're kind of blending into that environment. If you are in a place where it's safe to do so, you could take off your shoes and get the benefits of grounding as you do that. But trees are amazing. We know that they take in CO2 and transform it into oxygen. So you have a higher oxygen rich environment there. And there's also these volatile organic compounds, the VOCs, that trees also off gas that are very good for humans. So there's a growing body of research that also supports this forest bathing. If you're here in Yakima, we have the Arboretum.
Yes,
Very accessible, beautiful, free place to go.
Yeah.
You can go to a park and do this. You can head up to the mountains. You know, if you're not able to do this, I found a YouTube channel, Forestry England, put together these 360-degree panoramas of the forest.
Okay.
So we can link to that, and you can go into that. If you engage all your senses in your imagination, you're still going to get a lot of these soothing therapeutic benefits, even though you're not physically present. So that is not ideal, but it's a good second.
You need a little quick pick-me-up in the middle of your work break. Not able to go outside.
No one would even know.
Yeah.
Go to Forestry England's YouTube channel.
I will definitely put that on the website. I'll find that link because that sounds so fascinating. These are free things that you could do, and these are the types of habits that I love this because there is so much going on, and our cup runneth over, and how do we help? We have to help ourselves first.
We help ourselves first. And truly, like, that's my mission. I realized as a coach, I'd always been drawn to social justice work and change work, and it was really exhausting, and I got burned out doing this work when I was younger, and I moved back to Yakima wanting to be part of changing this community. And then I realized, like, that old adage that peace starts within is totally true. So as a coach now, and I work more one-on-one with people, the work that I do, yes, it helps that person in that moment, but I know that the ripple effects of that are that the other people that they love in their lives, their partners, their friends, their children, they benefit from that person dealing with their baggage and their trauma and coming to a new place. So, I'm here to help people in person. I also offer Zoom support. And if all this stuff is getting to be way too much for you and you want a little more support to navigate all of the insanity and trauma that we've all collectively been through, please reach out. I have some really unique tools to help walk people through that and just release the weight of the energy that gets really stored up in our bodies.
I love that. We all have these special gifts that we were given, and a lot of us fight these gifts.
Yeah.
And I like how you said that. Like, you got burned out from giving out your passions, but you kind of adjusted and reset and figured out how you can continue to make your soul flow, but also at the same time taking, So are you okay with offering up another free session?
I would absolutely love to do that. And I'm going to let, whoever wins this can choose between two options. So one of them is a strengths focused session which I love doing these because it really helps you identify what makes you unique.
Yes.
And learn the language of that, identifying what you bring to the table and what you need in an environment, work, relationship, otherwise, to be able to be your best.
Yes.
So there's that.
It's different than any other test that I've ever seen too, because it gives you all, instead of saying like, oh, these are your weak points, it starts off with all of the
this
awesome
is your magnificence.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
I love
So there's that choice.
Okay.
The winner could also choose from one of my other sessions, which is called a quantum time release, a little bit of a maybe esoteric explanation. I also just call it an emotional cleanse. And if you've seen the movie Inside Out or are familiar of it at all, you know, there's these emotions kind of running the show. And the brain has this collection of memories that have a different color related to what they are. Well, that's actually very accurate. And so when we have a lot of stuff coming up for us, if we notice ourselves having like road rage or maybe being snappy with our kids or a partner, it's possible that you need to give yourself kind of an emotional cleanse and a release of the intensity of those things.
Yes.
So in this process, we do that in a one setting and go through like the 5 major negative emotions: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and shame, and release the intensity of them. And I love doing this because it will leave you feeling lighter and more like your true self.
I love that. We were doing something earlier where I have something coming up and it's really been bugging me. And so you asked me these questions, and by the end of it, I was like, okay.
Just a little brain scramble.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool thing. So thank you for providing your gifts to everybody. Yes. You can head to KW.com or KFFM.com and enter to win right now. It's always a pleasure. How can people find you on social media?
You can find me. My website is EmilyJamesonCoaching.com. I'm on Facebook at Emily Jameson Coaching, Instagram at the Emily Jameson, and LinkedIn Emily Jameson Coaching.
Love it. Getting better and better like a fine wine. Emily, anything else you would like to share?
At the very least, take a deep breath right now. Take a couple of deep breaths because we all need to do the work of soothing our nervous systems a little bit. And once we regroup, then we can recharge and get connected with the ways that we want to change the world and impact policy.
We can, we will, we do. I love it. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Sarah.